Alright, in these videos we will look at how to make this little guy. We're going to make his face. It's all basic shapes. We're going to do some different things to combine different shapes, to delete parts of shapes, and kind of modify shapes. But for the most part it's pretty straightforward and simple little shapes. So I'll bring you through this step by step. There'll probably be a couple videos here. I'll stop at some point so that there's clear breaks so you can kind of see each individual little part of this thing. So to begin, this starts life as a rectangle. So your rectangle tool is in your toolbar. You'll use this toolbar a lot in Illustrator. There are many tools hidden underneath each of these tools, as you can kind of see here. All the ones that have a triangle next to them, they have more tools hidden underneath. So let's start with our rectangle tool. M on our keyboard is our shortcut if you didn't want to click here. So this is going to be the outline of the guy's head. So we can make this fairly large here. This is the big shape that you see here. Obviously it's not rounded yet, but it will be. Next thing I want to do is I want to give this thing a color. So I'm going to change the fill color of this shape. Now, once you make a shape, it's automatically still selected. The way you know something's selected, you see these boxes around the outside where you can kind of change the size. If you go outside the corner, you can rotate. That tells you that something is selected. If it wasn't selected, let's say I clicked somewhere else by accident or used a different tool, then I can just go back to this black selection tool. V is your keyboard shortcut, and I can click on here. Okay, so now I have it selected. So to change the color, there are two parts of the color we can change. We can change the fill, meaning the inside color, and we can change the stroke, meaning the outline around this thing we can give a color. Well, in our case, for pretty much all of these lines here, we're not going to have an outline color, with a few exceptions. So what we want to do is we want to change this inside color. So what I do is if I double click on this here, then that brings up this box. And I'm going to pick some kind of flesh tone color. So kind of regardless of whether you're doing a lighter or darker skin tone, it's going to be in this range somewhere in here that you'll find kind of what you're looking for. So you can take your time doing this. And the nice thing is you can always come back to this later too. So if you pick a color and later you don't like it, you can always go back and change it. So there's my skin tone for this particular character. Alright, next thing I want to do is I want to round these corners off. So what I'm going to do is I'm still in my selection tool here. If you don't see these little circles right here, you may just need to zoom in. To zoom, there are two ways you can do it. Option on your keyboard, you would hold down and use your mouse wheel to go in and out, or you can also do Command and plus or minus to zoom in and out. So as far as rounding these corners, I'm just going to grab this little circle and drag it in pretty much as far as it'll go. If I go to where it's red, that's as far as I can round, and that looks fine for this, or I could go a little bit less. It's kind of really up to me what I want. Now, if you've used Illustrator before, you might wonder, well, why are we using this rectangle and rounding it as opposed to just using an oval? So what I'll do is I'll just real quickly on the side here make an oval. You don't need to do this, just to show you kind of what that head shape would look like. And you can see that this looks much more like a head than this oval here. So that's kind of why I did what I did. Alright, next thing we will work with is going to be, sorry, I have a little cheat sheet here. Let's do the ears, it looks like, is the next thing that I did. So I'm going to make this oval. So to do that, I need to pick my ellipse tool. L will get me there. If you were on your rectangle tool before and you hold your mouse down on that, it's hidden behind there. Again, L on the keyboard will also get you there. And what I want to do is drag a shape for the ears. So something along these lines. It's going to be a little bit below center, most likely. Again, size of the ears is up to you. It's cartoon characters, so you can do what you want. If you want to adjust it after you make it, just switch to your selection tool and move it wherever you'd like. Adjust the size of it, where it's placed. You want it to overlap the head about halfway. I want to add a little bit of depth to this. So you can see on the sample here how the ear is a little bit darker. The light is kind of hitting the face more directly. Maybe there's some hair blocking the ear a little bit. So when the light hits it, it's going to just be a little bit darker. So what I'm going to do is to change the fill color in this, I have it selected. I double click on the fill, and I'm going to go just down and to the right a little bit. The reason I'm going down is because as we go up and down, this is brightness, so I'm making it a little less bright. And in this direction, left to right, is saturation, meaning how much color. Everything over here is like super colorful. Everything over here would be like black and white. So we're going to go down and to the right just a little bit, because that's kind of what lighting does in real life as you get less light on something. Alright, so there is my color for my ear. Now, it looks a little bit goofy, because we know that this ear shouldn't be in front of the face. If we were making this out of construction paper, this piece would be on top of this piece. So the way that we do that is we're going to look for a window called our Layers window. It is on the right-hand side when you first start Illustrator, generally. Now if it's not there, you can go up to Window and they're in alphabetical order, you'd be looking for layers. F7 on your keyboard will also get you there. So once you see this layers thing, you notice that you have layer 1, and that's really all you see. Think of this layer 1 at the moment like a folder. Inside of that folder are all the construction paper pieces that we've made. So to see inside of this folder, I hit this little arrow button right here. Now on mine, I have many more pieces than you do because I have this finished character. So think of this as all these construction paper pieces that I made earlier. Here are the two that I just made right now. Here's the ear, here's the face. Now the ear is currently on top of the face. I want to flip-flop these. So what I would do is I can drag one up or drag the other one down. Now you notice as I drag, that light blue line is indicating where this thing is going to go. So once I switch them, I'm good. There we go. Now this looks much better. The ear is here. So I'm still in my selection tool. Now that I can kind of see what I'm working with, I can move this thing. I can do whatever I'd like. By the way, if you want to move something just a little bit and it's selected and you're on your selection tool, you can actually just use your arrow keys on the keyboard as well to kind of nudge things around. I would now like to make another ear. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Option and I'm going to drag with my selection tool this around. Now as you notice, if I'm holding down Option, the cursor changes. That's letting me know I'm copying this. Now to really make sure that this ear goes straight across, not only am I going to hold Option, I'm going to start holding Shift as well. And you see what that did there? It made a jump so that it's straight across from that ear. So I'm still holding Option, still holding Shift. I'm going to be sure to let go of the mouse button before I let go of the other keyboard buttons. And there we go. Now I got two ears on this guy. And I can see this ear looks like it's sticking out just a little more than the other one, so I'm going to just nudge that just a little bit. That's pretty good. So again, you can see you can keep going back messing with these things. Alright, now that we got ears, the next thing we're going to do is the nose. Now something that was kind of cool, the video that I got this from explaining this, I never knew that in general, people's noses, the bridge of your nose begins at the top of your ears, and the base of your nose, the bottom of your nose where your nostrils are, ends at the bottom of your ears. So whenever you're drawing characters, you can kind of follow that rule, and it'll help kind of make things look in proportion. Now, again, because it's a cartoon, we can exaggerate that a little bit, but that's roughly what we're looking for. So the nose starts off as a rectangle. So I'm going to start roughly there and kind of make it go the length of this thing. I'm thinking something like that for my first rectangle. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this. Again, you notice I switched to my selection tool here. V on my keyboard would also have gotten that. And I'm just making sure I'm centered on the paper. So I'm looking to just kind of see that this is centered, figure out exactly where I want it up and down. Maybe something like that for now. Alright, next thing I want to do is I want to round these corners over. So again, with my black arrows selection tool, I'm going to grab and round these corners. And you can see I made it as round as it can go. It's up to you how round you want that to be. And that would be even okay for our nose just like that. But I want to add this other kind of piece to the nose where the nostrils kind of flare out. So I'm going to take and I'm going to do another rectangle. And I'm going to make it maybe something like that. You know, I'm going to go a little skinnier, maybe something like that. Okay, so now I'm going to move this thing so they're centered. And that looks right. You can use some of those pink lines to your advantage as well. I have so many objects on here, it can be kind of tell which pink lines to look at. It can be tough. And what I want to do now is I want to round these corners, but I want to do it a little bit differently. So first thing I need to do though is I need to zoom in. I can't really see what I'm doing. So I'm going to zoom in. Now I can see these corners. Alright, I want to round the top corners less than I want to round the bottom corners. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take direct selection tool, this white arrow. So far we've been using this black arrow. This selects the entire shape or the entire thing, whatever you're working on at a time. The white arrow selects bits and pieces of things. So what I want to do is I want to select these top two corners that make up this shape. This shape is made of 4 points in this case, 4 anchors they're called, and that are connected by lines. I want to select those top 2 anchors. So I'm going to click on that one, I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm going to click on this one. Shift allows me to select more than one thing. If I wasn't holding Shift, let's see what would happen here. If I click here, I'm not holding Shift, and as I click here, if you notice, this one gets deselected. So I'm clicking and letting go on these while I hold Shift, and if you notice, both of these two are selected. Now the way I can tell is these are colored in, these are white down here, so that's telling me they're not selected. Now I'm going to grab up here, and I'm just going to round this top just a little bit. Now I'm going to repeat that process on the bottom, but I'm going to round it more. So I'm going to hold Shift, again, white arrow selecting these corners. And now I'm going to drag this in a good bit, something like that. Alright, now I'm going to zoom out and kind of take a look at this thing and see what needs to change. So this whole shape needs to come down, I can tell in mine. Now yours obviously going to be different than mine. I'm going to go back to my selection tool because I want to select this entire piece. I clicked on it. Now I can use my arrows or my mouse and kind of move this thing around. So I want to see, and that's looking pretty good. And although this is two pieces, it kind of looks like one for now. For now, we'll just leave that alone. We'll come back to that later, and we're actually going to join those and make those one thing. But for now, that's good. All right, so the next thing I want to work on, let's get maybe some eyeballs on this thing. So our eyes are going to start out just as ovals. As far as the shape, so again, you see I'm selecting it from in here. I was on the rectangle tool. If I hold down, I can find the ellipse. I can also use L on my keyboard. As far as size and shape goes, something roughly like you see here. Generally, eyes are a little bit wider than they are tall, so you can kind of play around until you get something that you feel looks appropriate. As far as spacing and all that goes, just kind of trust your eyes and look at it. Now let's give this a white color to this. Now the easiest way to get to white isn't to double click on here. The reason I don't like doing this is because as I drag over here, I may get this white or this shade of white, and it seems like, well, why would that matter if it's, you know, in this range over here? Well, small changes in light colors and small changes in dark colors, it really makes a big difference. So it may not truly be white. So I want to find a way to make sure that this eye is white. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press this little button right here while I have this oval selected. What that's going to do, that brings me back to the default white fill with a black stroke. Now I don't want a black outline around this eye, but I did want that white color. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on the stroke, again while this shape is still selected, and I'm going to press this button right here. This indicates that I don't want an outline on this thing. Alright, so now I have that white of the eye. Now what we're eventually going to delete this part, the second eye, but just to kind of see the size of the eye and see if I like that, I can see, yeah, you know, that size is fine. Now we're going to finish building our eyeball. So this is going to end up being 4 pieces, this eyeball. So here's our first one. Our second one is going to be the pupil, the colored portion of the eye. Once again, it's going to be an ellipse. And I'm going to actually start in the center of this thing. Now, eyes can be looking anywhere. So if I want this guy to look to the side or something, I could. In fact, you know what? Let's do that. Let's have him looking off to the side. So as I drag this oval, if you notice, is if I get close to a circle, those like plus sign lines pop up. So I can kind of make sure I'm making a circle. The other thing I could do is if I hold shift while I'm dragging the circle, that forces it to be a circle instead of just an oval. So I'm thinking maybe something about that size for my pupil. I'm going to place this wherever I'd like it. And then I'm going to pick whatever fill color I want my eyes to be. Maybe I'll go with like a dark blue. And again, you can pick any color you'd like. I'm going to go with that. Maybe even a little darker. Alright, so there is my eye. I'm going to just shrink that just a little bit. There we go, I like that. Okay, so again, I'm not going to do that on this side because what I'm going to do is I'm actually even going to delete this one. When we are all finished this eyeball, I'm going to copy it and move it over. Alright, next, I would like to put a little glare on the eye. The reason that's going to be there, our eyes are wet. You know, we always have tears in them. So it's kind of shiny. So I want to replicate that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a circle. And that circle is going to go right here. Just nice small like that. And I'm going to give it that white fill color again. So yours might be colored in the color of your eye right now. So I'm going to click this white with black. And I'm going to hit this and make none for the stroke. So there we go. So now I got that exact same white that I was using before. If you notice, I let it overlap that pupil just a little bit. Otherwise, you're not going to see that glare. So there we go. There is a glare on my eye right now. Last thing I want to do is I did these eyelids on the bottom. I want to show you how to do that. So this is where things start becoming a little bit more advanced. We're going to take our rectangle tool, starting somewhere on the outside of this eye, just a little bit above the bottom of the pupil. I'm going to make a rectangle. And again, you see I'm going wider than the eye is. Now I want this color to match the color that I used on the nose and the ears. So what I can do, if I'm not sure, say maybe these don't even match each other and it's kind of bothering you, want to fix these things up, well, we're going to learn how right now we can use a color that we used before. I'm going to have this shape selected. I'm going to use my eyedropper tool and I'm going to eyedrop this color here that I used on the ear. So as long as the shape is selected, if you switch this eyedropper tool, the letter I will get you there. You can click on anything you want and it's going to make it match that thing. So there we go. So now it's the color of my eyelid. So now I have this eyelid. I just got to trim off this extra. We're going to use a tool to do that called Shape Builder. So there's two phases to use in Shape Builder. The first phase each time is to select the parts that you want to use to kind of cut and get rid of things. And then the second phase is to actually use the Shape Builder tool. So on this first phase, I'm going to go to my black arrow. I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm going to click on all the different pieces that I need. So I'm going to click on the white of the eye, I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm going to click on the eyelid. So now I'm done this phase 1. I have the parts I need selected. Here is Shape Builder. Shift and M will get you there. You can also just click on it in the toolbar. And Shape Builder can do two things. It can join things together and it can delete things, parts of things. So we're going to delete this chunk of this thing. So first thing, I can tell I did this right because I see these gray dots showing up. If I don't see those, that indicates that I didn't select both of these pieces that I needed. Alright, so like I said, Shape Builder can do two things. It can join things and it can delete things. Well, right now you see a plus next to the mouse. That tells you it wants to join things right now. If I hold Option, that plus switches to a minus. Now what I can do is I can click on the chunk that I want to go away. And this thing is pretty well done now. It looks like an eyeball, but obviously we need two eyeballs. So what we are going to do is we're going to take this one and we're going to put it over here. We're going to create a copy of it as we do that. So first thing I want to do though is I want to make it so that this thing's easy to move together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my black or the black selection tool and I'm going to click on the four parts that make up the eye. I'm going to start with the glare, a little circle, because it's very small so it could be hard to click later. Then I'm going to hold Shift, I'm going to click on the pupil, the white of the eye, and the eyelid. So I clicked on all four of those parts. Even if it didn't feel like you're selecting everything, as long as you click on each of those, you probably did. So I have all four of those selected. I could just copy it and move it over now, but to make this easier, I'm going to, now that it's all selected, right-click somewhere and go to Group. What that does is anytime I click on one of those four pieces I just selected, it picks all four of them. There's still separate things that I can color differently and move different pieces around and things, but as far as me working with them right now, it's kind of like everything's stuck together. So to copy something, we did it on the ear. I'm going to select the eyeball, hold Option, and drag a copy over. So I'm holding the Option and Shift again, just to make sure this thing stays straight. And there we go, I got my two eyeballs. So at this point I'll probably end this first video and then I'll make one more kind of showing you how to do the rest of this guy, but so far there's our little dude.